Here in Westchester, we're still in the midst of historically low inventory of homes for sale, which means this is still very much a seller's market. Buyers often get frustrated with the lack of options, having to bid against other buyers, winding up paying well over list price on homes. One strategy to help buyers get a deal in this market is to buy a fixer-upper using a renovation loan. I'm Gabi Shapiro, your Westchester Solar Realtor, and here's why that's so important. Over the past year, homes that were labeled as fixer-uppers in the MLS spent a median of 22 days on market versus only 16 days for homes labeled as renovated. That might not seem like much of a difference, but it results in fixer-uppers selling for 102% of the list price rather than 105% of the list price. So it's like you're saving 3% on the price tag, but also with the help of a savvy realtor, you can find a home to buy and renovate where you can actually add more value than the price you pay. For example, imagine instead of shopping for $1 million home, you shop for a $700,000 home. You can put $200,000 worth of work into it, and now you've got a home that's worth $1 million. In that scenario, you've just created an extra $100,000 of equity in your home. So with this strategy of shopping for fixer-uppers with a renovation loan, you expand your options, deal with less competition from other buyers, you're going to spend less, and you get to customize the home the way you like it, and you can potentially gain extra equity. No one knows more about reno loans than Eamon McKeon, a renovation loan specialist with Loan Depot. So we sat down to chat and discuss what they are and how they could benefit you. What is a renovation loan and how is it different from a typical mortgage?
So a typical mortgage is, we're going to give you money to obviously purchase the property. You're going to put a down payment down. So let's say you put 20% down on the purchase price. We're going to lend you 80%, to acquire the property. On a renovation loan, we're going to give you a percentage of the purchase price plus the total renovation cost. So we're going to take the purchase price plus the total renovation cost, add those two numbers together. That's your total acquisition cost, and then we will lend you a percentage of that, 80% or 90%, 95, 97% of that total number.
Mm-hmm. So you can still do like a 5% down conventional or 3.5% FHA. And are there zero down VA options?
Correct, yeah. So you have all the same down payment options that you would on those regular programs. You have those same down payment options on the renovation loans. It's just that the percentage is based on not the purchase price anymore, but the purchase price plus the total renovation cost.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Are there any additional steps that buyers or agents might have to go through?
So for agents, I think there's less steps because you're able to show a prospective buyer homes that they otherwise would not want to look at because it doesn't fit their needs. So maybe there's an opportunity to get a buyer into a house a little bit quicker with a renovation loan, because whatever is not working for that buyer in that house, a renovation loan can solve around that, and we can include whatever those updates are to make the house theirs. For a buyer, when they acquire property, certainly there are some additional steps. What we try to do as the lender here is streamline that process for them. So we'll do a really strong pre-approval up front. Their offer gets accepted. The big difference is obviously they need to identify what's the scope of work, like what do they actually want to do to this house, okay? And then more important than that is identify the contractor that they want to work with. So we try to separate the two, the regular loan process, like they would normally go through on a regular purchase, and then I have a renovation team that handles just getting the contractor approved, getting the scope of work approved, and the idea is that the two of those come together at the end, and everybody's happy and we close.
Mm-hmm. So I know a common stumbling block we often run into is insurance. So if people are buying a home that's not in great condition, it might be hard to insure. Mm-hmm. So are like insurance companies a little bit more forgiving when they know the work is going to be done? Is it still easy to insure a home that you're renovating?
So depending on the level of renovations that are taking place and the condition of the home as is, we may require, or the insurance company may require you to get what's called a builder risk policy. So So you're getting a insurance policy just for the time that the property is under renovations. Okay, and then once those renovations are complete, then you convert to a regular homeowner policy. So that will typically see on these more complicated projects.
Awesome. So again, that's kind of expanding the options of what you can look at and what you can then have purchasing power for. So then what can it be used for? Like, does it have to be necessary renovations, or can it be kind of optional repairs, like adding a pool, adding solar panels, extensions on the home, even accessory dwelling units?
Yeah, so all those that you mentioned can be or allowed with these renovation loans.
Nice.
Certainly works great on the properties that need it. So the homes that are being sold as is. We do a lot on, like, for foreclosures or short sales or other distressed sales where the homeowner or the owner of the property is unable or unwilling to make the repairs to make it livable. We're able to finance those repairs and renovations into the loan and close as is. But if if you want to add a pool, or you need to add an extension, or you want to add what's popular now is adding these ADUs to get either an in-law into the property or additional rental income, those are all allowed with these renovation loans.
Awesome. And what happens if the budget changes during that renovation process?
So not ideal ever if the scope of work starts to change, but we're trying to close these deals as quickly as we possibly can. So we're asking the contractor to itemize these budgets very quickly for us, and sometimes we don't know the full extent of the issue until we get in there and start opening up the walls. So first step is we're going to have a HUD consultant most times go into the property, identify for us as the lender what are the necessary repairs, and they're going to work with the contractor to get that budget itemized for us and get a realistic cost for these things. Okay, not a contractor who's going to lowball the numbers and then try to come back later and increase it. Like, the HUD consultant is kind of the bad guy there for us, and will help to get a realistic budget together. In addition to the contractor's scope of work, we're going to make the customer also borrow 10 to 20% above that number as a contingency reserve, and it's that contingency reserve that's there for that exact issue. Any cost overruns, unforeseen issues, change orders that happen, we have money set aside specifically for that. Okay, so let's say you do all the repairs and you don't have the need to use the contingency reserve. So what happens with the contingency money, or any money that's left over at the end of the renovation, is one, you could use it towards another project in the home, okay, with the contractor, or that money gets applied back to the principal of your mortgage.
Awesome. So it's good to have a buffer there. That's great. Does it take longer to close, and does it still make for a competitive offer if you're maybe bidding against other buyers?
So I think from a competitive offer perspective, I think it does, because certainly on the homes that need renovations, things, foreclosures and short sales and, distressed properties, a lot of the other people that are looking at those properties are investors. The renovation loans, while it can be used for investment properties and second homes, most of it's geared towards people purchasing it as their primary residence. So that person who's buying it as their primary residence is not necessarily looking at the dollar and cents. They're more emotionally attached to the property and are willing to possibly pay a little bit more for it because they're going to be in it for longer. Okay?
Right.
From the loan process, we try to keep it within the framework of the sales contract. So if we're given 45 or 60 days, we're going to do everything we can to hit those dates. So how we do that is, one, again, we do a really strong pre-approval up front, so we make sure that the customer themselves are qualified. Okay, so that when their offer gets accepted, all we really have to do is just really focus our attention in on the renovation piece of it. Bringing the HUD consultant in up front is helpful with that. And then I have a dedicated renovation team that just handles that piece of it. Okay, so that process really does kind of streamline everything for us. I've, the quickest we've ever done a renovation loan from start to finish, it was an FHA 203K. We did it in 22 days. And it was a great experience for everybody.
Awesome. So you mentioned there's a HUD consultant involved to be kind of a little bit extra critical, make sure that the scope of work is kind of accurate and you know what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the appraisers involved to look at not just the value of the home as is, but what it's going to be worth after the repairs. What what are your customers saying? What are some, or what else, should we know about the process? Like, this might sound a little bit scary, like, oh, there's these extra steps, a contractor, a HUD consultant, and an appraiser, different kind of appraisal. Like, what would you say to folks who are considering a renovation loan?
Well, I think, if you're somebody that keeps striking out on properties because you're being overbid, or the homes that you're seeing that are within your price range just need a lot of repairs, then you start to warm up to these type of things, okay? And what I recommend for buyers is, let's keep it simple. Like, yes, we can get crazy with these renovations. We can knock the thing down, build it back up. We can pick it up, move it to a different site if we have to. But you're buying a house, it's stressful. Then you're doing a renovation is also stressful. Now you're combining the two together. So I think working with experts is helpful, okay? But then also just keeping the renovations as simple as possible,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Identify the things that are needed to make the house livable. Identify the big ticket items that are difficult to save for, like updating the heating system, putting a new roof on, windows, things like that. And then it's okay to have other projects to do over time in the home, okay? You don't have to necessarily get it, completely done right up front.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps to kind of de-stress the process.
Awesome. Are there any other advantages of a renovation loan, say over like getting a HELOC after the fact?
So I think the benefit of a renovation loan is that everything is done up front. Okay, you're not spending, the money that you've worked so hard to save on the renovations post-closing. You're keeping your credit clear, right? A lot of times people come back to us and they say, hey, we need a renovation loan. But at that point, they've already run up all their credit cards. Their credit scores are down, and now they're having a more difficult time getting qualified. So it's always better to do it up front, because then when you come back, let's say rates improve, now you're doing it as a rate and term refinance, which is always going to get you better terms than if you're trying to take cash out or home equity line of credit.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I was showing a home to a buyer the other day, and they were kind of listing out all these things that they would do to the house, and I mentioned renovation loans, and they were like shocked. They had no idea that this was even a possibility.
Yeah.
So I'm super glad to get this info and be able to share it with folks so that they know kind of while they're shopping they have a few extra options.
Correct. Exactly.
So if people want to get in touch with you and maybe check if this is a right option for them, where can they reach you?
So Eamon McCune, I'm with Loan Depot. My office is located in Tarrytown. I'm there probably 5 days a week. Cell number is always the best to get me on. That's 914-282-7310. Happy to call, text, whatever. Yeah, and always happy to talk about renovation loans.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.